To go to Mars is expensive. If China says they want to put military bases on Mars, we'll be in Mars in 10 months. NASA doesn't have a spacecraft that'll get us there. Guess who does? Elon does.
Pivoting to more recent events, there's, of course, a great interest in not only discovering life on Mars, but putting life on Mars. A man by the name of Elon Musk, who you once called Elon Musk is more important than Jeff Bezos, Steve Jobs, and Mark Zuckerberg. Wow, that's pretty awesome. And then recently, however, responding to some skepticism that
More important? I don't think I would have used the word important.
This
I might have said he's more productive or more, there might have been a different word there.
You said, well, yeah, it's a long article. You said, as important as Steve Jobs was, no doubt about it.
It's an article?
It's an NBC, article on NBC.
Wow, okay.
You talk about this. Anyway, recently you were on Bill Maher's show, I think, and you talked about, what your thoughts were on it. Maybe you can recapitulate those. But
it's hard to get all my thoughts in there because he doesn't really give you room.
Who, Bill?
If he doesn't agree with you, he gives you less room to talk.
What are your thoughts? I mean, because
my thoughts on what?
Your thoughts on Musk's desire to put Mars, fill Mars with life forms, including humans and himself potentially. He said he wants to die on Mars. I hope it's not on impact. Clarify what you feel is the relevance or the importance of his mission to extend consciousness to Mars.
I never want to get in the way of people's dreams, especially if they're fed by advances and innovations in science and technology. I have no need to do that, especially since a dream, when executed, even if the dream is not realistic or even impossible, it can take you along paths that produce fascinating or other interesting developments in science and technology that we benefit from. So I don't have any problems with dreams at all. So I don't run around volunteering commentary on his dreams. What happens is people come to me and ask what I think of them. And so I wrote a whole book on this, originally titled Failure to Launch: The Dreams and Delusions of Space Enthusiasts, chronicling the mismatch of where people thought we'd be in space versus where we were in space. And so it has every thought I've ever had on the past, present, and future of space. Now, you can say, well, you have different thoughts, okay. But these thoughts are not just opinions that I'm expressing. This is a very careful read of the history of human engagement in major advances in science and technology. That's what I'm basing it on. Not on my desires, not on what I wish or hope. It had nothing to do with that. And all I'm saying is, to go to Mars is expensive. Likely the most expensive thing we would ever do as a species outside of the waging of world war. The history of very expensive things sits squarely in the realm of geopolitics and the praise of deity and royalty, which is less of a driving force today than it once was. So these are the three big drivers. So there's praise of royalty and deity. That's what gets you the cathedrals and the pyramids and this sort of thing. Huge investments of human capital, human and financial capital. Then there's the promise of economic return. That's a good one. You want to do it because you want to get rich. Talk about a motivator. That's a good one right there. And a third one is the I don't want to die motivator. Someone has somehow threatened you by saying they're going to achieve the new high ground, or they're going to look better than you in front of people you're trying to attract. So I arrived at these three drivers in an essay I wrote for the Columbia History of the 20th Century. That's the title of the book, and it's in there. It's called Paths to Discovery. And what I wanted to do, what I did was, the motivation was, I asked myself, what does it take to motivate a civilization or a culture to do something really, really expensive? And if I want to go to Mars, and that's really, really expensive, let me look at what has motivated people in the past. And maybe we can recreate that in the present, and then we all just march to Mars, okay? And I was ready. Had a grid, make a whole grid. Here's the expense of the project, and here are all the possible causes. Possible drivers, just because we want to, or it's because we love it, or it's in our DNA, or it's just, we're just curious, or we're humans, or we're Americans. I was ready for this. And at the end of the day, only 3 drivers emerged for the expensive things. You have other drivers for less expensive things or non-expensive things. The most expensive things have only 3 drivers. Like I said, it's the praise of royalty or deity, the quest for economic return, and the fact that you don't want to die. So the I don't want to die driver, I don't want to die poor driver, and all right. So Musk says he wants to put people on Mars. And I put it through this filter and I ask, is it in praise of a deity or royalty? Well, I said those are no longer drivers, okay? Is there an economic return on it? Well, clearly no, okay? Not in putting the first people on Mars. Do we feel threatened so that we have to do this? Well, not at the moment, but maybe one day we will. If, like I said, if China says, because China's all the buzz in Washington lately, what do we do with our frenemy around the world? And if China says they want to put military bases on Mars, we'll be in Mars in 10 months. Except NASA doesn't have a spacecraft that'll get us there. Guess who does? Elon does. So Elon rolls out his Starship, and then we go to Mars on Elon's ship. You know something? If we do that, it's tax money that sent it there, not money out of Elon's pocket or out of his profits, margins, or anything. So all I'm saying is that I don't foresee us going to Mars unless we believe it is in our geopolitical interest. And if it is, it's not private enterprise that's going to do it. It's governments. And he could go to Mars as a vanity project. I don't mean that in any pejorative sense. It's just that he could choose to go to Mars with no expectation of a return on that investment because he's either will one day be wealthy enough to do that, or he can band together money from Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos and put together the $800 billion or $1 trillion and then send astronauts there. That would be fun. I don't have a problem with that. But don't tell me that it's part of your business model, because that would be without precedent in the history of civilization, that you would spend that much money and somehow figure out how to make money off of it. No. The way this typically happens, especially if it's never been done before, the first Europeans to the New World were not the Dutch East India Trading Company. It was Columbus, sent by Queen Isabella and King Ferdinand. By the way, there was some private investment in that, but the full motivation and the full driver was geopolitical. Find a shorter way to the Far East. Look for India. When he gets to the New World, then he calls them all Indians, okay? That's kind of weird. All right. And then, but he gets to write down where the trade winds are and where the hostiles are and the friendlies and where the food is. And he can characterize that voyage such that a private enterprise who didn't have to take those risks, whereas geopolitics will take those risks in a heartbeat. Businesses can't do that because they're usually using other people's money, or even if it's your own money. This is what I'm saying. It has nothing to do with whether we're technologically able to do it. We have an SUV-sized rover on Mars. Of course we can get to Mars. Of course. That's not the issue here. This is my point. But I don't want to stop him. But people keep asking me, what do I think of it? And I'll say, I don't think it's realistic. Not because we don't know how to do it, but because at some point, somebody's got to write the check. And it's not because it's next thing to explore. That has never been the reason.
I think I'd add one thing that maybe dovetails to the deity, but not really. And it's eschatological, effectively, worrying about, existential risks and basically.
No, that's the I don't want to die driver. That's fine. That would not have to invoke deity. The deity is, I fear this entity more powerful than I am, and I better do things to appease them. And so you build pyramids, you build cathedrals, you do things for God because you want to be treated well in death or even in life. So that as a motivator, because religions don't control societies as much today, certainly not technologically able societies as they once did. That's all.
But there's still the Ernest Becker denial of death, and we do things in part to stave off these horrific fears that otherwise would drive us crazy.
Then it's the I don't want to die driver, and that's a really big driver.
Yeah.
So, but why does it have to do with Mars?
I always point out how much of the ocean have we really explored, and isn't it a little bit more practical to build underwater cities and backup drive?
Yeah, those are all false comparisons. Yes, it's more practical, but just do both. NASA's budget is 0.4%. 0.4 of 1 penny on your tax dollar. And you're saying, don't spend them up there, put it in the ocean. Do both. I'm not going to stop you.
Yeah. And I think even what you say in his response to you,
I didn't see his response, but he's defensive, of course, because he's got a whole business there. And I don't have a problem with him jumping in and getting angry. I'm not saying this because I'm decreeing it. I'm saying it because that's how people have behaved. That's all. Don't shoot the messenger.
All right.
I'm not even going to get in arguments with people. And by the way, I put it all in this book. Not even any of the books you've mentioned thus far. This other book, which the publisher renamed because they didn't like the word failure in the title, because it was failure to launch, dreams and delusions. The word failure and delusion was in the title. So we can't have that. We renamed it Space Chronicles, Facing the Ultimate Frontier. And in there, all of this is detailed.